In 1683, the Ottoman Empire controlled 3 continents. They had the world's most powerful military, the richest treasury. Everyone paid tribute to the Sultan. 100 years later, they were called the sick man of Europe. 200 years later, they didn't exist. Here's what nobody tells you. It wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a 600-year decline that followed 7 specific stages, 7 financial patterns that repeated like clockwork. And right now, in 2025, the United States just entered stage 5, the same stage where the Ottomans lost control of their currency, where their military became too expensive to maintain, where their debts consumed everything. Stage 6, that's when provinces start breaking away. Stage 7, that's when the empire becomes a memory. I'm going to show you each stage, the exact years it happened to the Ottomans, the exact financial moves they made, and then I'm going to show you the receipt. America is doing the exact same thing just 400 years later. By the end of this video, you'll understand why 2026 to 2035 will look nothing like the America you grew up in. Let's go back to 1453, because that's where it all begins. Stage 1, the Golden Age, conquest and currency supremacy, May 29th, 1453. Constantinople falls. The Ottomans just conquered the richest city in the world. Mehmed II stands in the Hagia Sophia and declares himself the new Caesar of Rome. But here's what made the Ottomans truly powerful. It wasn't just military conquest, it was their currency. The Ottoman gold sultani became the dollar of its time. Every merchant from Venice to India wanted it. Why? Because it was pure, 3.5 grams of actual gold. No debasement, no tricks. When your currency is trusted globally, you don't need to produce anything. The world pays you to use your money. Sound familiar? Between 1453 and 1520, the Ottomans controlled the Silk Road trade routes, the spice trade from India, all Mediterranean commerce, and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. They weren't just an empire, they were the world's central bank. Suleiman the Magnificent's treasury in 1520 held more gold than all of Europe combined. The empire produced nothing, they just taxed everything that moved through their territory. Traders paid to use Ottoman trade routes, they paid in Ottoman currency. The empire collected a fee on every transaction in the known world. Now look at America from 1944 to 1970. Bretton Woods, 1944. The world agrees. The dollar is now backed by gold, and everyone will trade in dollars. America becomes the world's reserve currency. For 26 years, America collected a fee on global trade, just like the Ottomans. The world paid US to use our money. We didn't need to make anything. We just printed dollars, and the world accepted them. This is stage 1, currency supremacy. The empire controls global trade. Their currency is trusted. Money flows in, not out. But here's the problem with stage 1. It makes you lazy. Why produce goods when the world gives you money for free? The Ottomans stopped innovating. They stopped building. They just collected taxes and lived like kings. America did the same thing after 1944. We stopped making steel, cars, electronics. Why build factories when we can just print dollars? In 1960, manufacturing was 27% of US GDP. Today, less than 11%. Stage 1 feels like winning. But it's actually the beginning of the end. Because while you're getting rich off your currency, someone else is building the future. Stage 2, the debt trap. When military costs exceed revenue, 1523. The Ottomans are at the gates of Vienna. Suleiman the Magnificent commands 120,000 soldiers, the largest army Europe has ever seen. There's just one problem. It costs a fortune to maintain. The Janissaries, the elite Ottoman soldiers, demanded higher salaries every year. The navy needed constant upgrades. Every border needed garrisons. Every conquest required more troops. By 1550, military spending consumed 60% of the Ottoman budget, but the conquests had slowed down. There were no new territories to tax, no new trade routes to control. Revenue stayed flat. Costs kept rising. So the Ottomans did what every empire does. They borrowed money. In 1560, the Ottoman Empire took its first major loan from Venetian banks. Just a temporary measure, they said. They'd pay it back after the next conquest. Except there was no next conquest. By 1580, the empire was borrowing money just to pay interest on previous loans. The debt spiral had begun. Now let's talk about America. The United States maintains 750 military bases in 80 countries, 11 aircraft carrier strike groups, a military budget of $807 billion in 2024. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. But here's the kicker. We're not conquering new territory. We're not extracting tribute. We're just spending money to maintain an empire that stopped expanding in 1991. In 1980, U.S. national debt was $908 billion. Today, $36 trillion. Know what percentage of our budget goes to the military? About 13% of federal spending. But add veterans benefits, intelligence agencies, homeland security, and military portions of other departments, We're spending close to 25% of our budget on military, just like the Ottomans in their decline. And just like the Ottomans, we're funding it with debt. In 2024, the United States paid $880 billion just in interest on the debt. That's more than the entire military budget. We're borrowing money to pay interest on money we already borrowed. The Ottomans did this from 1560 to 1650, 90 years of debt accumulation. America started this cycle in 1980. We're 44 years in. Stage 2 is when the empire transitions from conquest to maintenance, when the military becomes a cost center instead of a profit center. The Ottomans couldn't afford to admit weakness, so they kept borrowing. America can't afford to admit we're overstretched, so we keep borrowing. Here's the terrifying part. Stage 2 is survivable. Empires can stay in Stage 2 for a century if they make hard choices. But they never make those choices. Instead, they move to Stage 3. Stage 3. Currency. Debasement. The inflation trap. 1584. Sultan Murad III has a problem. The treasury is empty. The military demands payment. Foreign debts are due. He can't raise taxes. The provinces are already rebelling. He can't cut the military. Enemies surround the empire. So he does what every desperate empire does. He debases the currency. The Sultani, that pure gold coin that made the Ottomans powerful, gets reduced from 3.5 grams to 3.2 grams, then 2.9 grams, then 2.5 grams. The weight kept dropping, but the government insisted each coin was still worth the same. One Ottoman merchant wrote in 1590, "The coin my grandfather trusted would buy a horse, now barely buys a saddle." Within 40 years, the Sultani lost 60% of its value. But the government kept saying everything was fine. They kept minting more currency. And every time they did, prices went up. By 1640, a loaf of bread cost 10 times what it cost in 1580. The people noticed. Bakers couldn't afford wheat. Soldiers couldn't afford food. Riots broke out in Istanbul. But the worst part? Nobody wanted Ottoman currency anymore. Venice stopped accepting it. Persia demanded payment in silver. Even merchants within the empire started using foreign coins. When your currency loses trust, you lose everything. August 15th, 1971. President Nixon appears on television and says 7 words that changed history. "I am temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporary? That's what he said. It's been 54 years. On that day, America did exactly what the Ottomans did in 1584. We broke the promise behind our currency. Before 1971, every dollar was backed by gold. Foreign countries could trade dollars for gold at $35 per ounce. The dollar had real value. After 1971, the dollar became paper-backed by nothing but trust. And just like the Ottomans, we immediately started printing. In 1970, the M2 money supply was $600 billion. Today, $21 trillion. We printed 35 times more money in 50 years. And just like the Ottoman Sultani, the dollar has lost 87% of its purchasing power since 1971. What cost $1 in 1971 costs $7.50 today. But the government keeps saying everything is fine. Inflation is only 3%, they tell you. Meanwhile, your rent doubled, your groceries tripled, and houses cost 10 times more. Ottomans, 1584 to 1640. Currency lost 60% of value over 56 years. America, 1971 to 2025. Currency lost 87% of value over 54 years. It's the same playbook, the same timeline, the same lie, just a temporary measure. But here's where it gets really dark. The Ottoman debasement didn't destroy the empire immediately. It took another 280 years for the final collapse. But Stage 3 is where the empire crosses the point of no return. Because once you debase the currency, you can never fully restore trust. Foreign powers stopped lending to the Ottomans. Trade partners demanded payment in gold, not paper. The empire's financial credibility, built over 130 years, evaporated in a single generation. In 2024, China sold $51 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. Japan sold $37 billion. Saudi Arabia is trading oil in yuan. They're not screaming about it. They're quietly exiting. Just like Venice and Persia quietly stopped accepting Ottoman currency. Stage 3 is when the world starts looking for the exit. And Stage 4, that's when they find it. Stage 4, regional rebellions. The provinces stop paying. 1683. The Ottomans just lost the Battle of Vienna. For the first time in 300 years, their army is in full retreat. But the real crisis isn't the military defeat. It's what happens next. Egypt stops sending tribute. The governor says the money is needed for local defense. Algeria declares autonomy. Still technically Ottoman, but they keep their own taxes now. Greece starts its independence movement. Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania. Within 80 years, the empire lost 40% of its territory. Not because of foreign conquest, because provinces simply stopped participating. Here's why this happens in stage 4. When the central currency is worthless and the central government is drowning in debt, provinces ask a simple question. What are we getting for our taxes? Constantinople demanded higher taxes to pay its debts. But what did provinces receive in return? No protection from enemies, no infrastructure investment, no trade benefits, just debt and debasement. So they stopped paying, and the empire couldn't stop them because the military was already stretched too thin and too broke. Stage 4 is the point of no return. This is when the empire admits it can't hold the periphery. It retreats to the core. Now let's talk about America in 2025. The United States isn't officially fragmenting, not yet. But look at what's actually happening. Texas has its own power grid. Refused federal control. Florida openly defies federal COVID policies and immigration enforcement. California refuses to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, operates its own foreign policy with climate agreements. Since 2020, 28 states have passed laws nullifying federal mandates. That's more than half the country. It's not called rebellion. It's called states' rights. But economically, it's the same thing. States are keeping more money and sending less to Washington. They're making their own deals with foreign countries. They're ignoring federal authority when it's inconvenient. When I say America is in stage 5, not stage 4, it's because we haven't hit full regional rebellion yet. But we're at the edge. Look at the warning signs. 19 states exploring state-level gold-backed currencies. Texas proposing its own gold depository independent of the federal government. Multiple states forming regional trade alliances. Interstate compacts that bypass federal authority. The centrifugal forces are building. States are asking the same question Ottoman provinces asked in 1683. What are we getting for our federal taxes? They're paying for $36 trillion in debt they didn't create. Wars they didn't vote for. Bailouts for states they don't live in. A currency that loses value every year. The Ottoman provinces stopped paying over 80 years, from 1683 to the 1760s. Their empire was geographically fractured with difficult communication. American states have interstate highways, instant communication, and integrated economies. If regions start seriously pulling away, it won't take 80 years. It might take 15. We're not there yet. That's stage 6, but we're one major financial crisis away from it. And that crisis? It's already baked into the system. Which brings us to stage 5, the stage America just entered. The stage where the numbers stop making sense. Stage 5, debt death spiral, when interest exceeds revenue. 1768. The Ottoman Empire faces a new war with Russia. They need money immediately. The treasury checks the books and discovers something terrifying. 70% of annual revenue now goes to interest payments on existing debts. Let that sink in. Before a single soldier is paid, before a single ship is built, before a single road is repaired, 7 out of every 10 coins collected in taxes goes straight to foreign banks. This is stage 5, the debt death spiral. Here's how it works. Year 1, you borrow $100 at 5% interest, you owe $5. Year 2, you can't pay, so you borrow $105 to pay the old debt. Now you owe $5.25. Year 3, you borrow $110.25. You owe $5.51. Each year you borrow more just to pay interest on what you already borrowed. The debt compounds. The interest grows. The cycle accelerates. The Ottomans entered stage 5 in 1768. By 1850, they had borrowed so much money from European banks that their entire customs revenue, every coin collected from every ship that entered every Ottoman port, was pledged directly to foreign creditors. The money didn't even touch Ottoman hands. Ships paid France, England, and Dutch banks directly. The Ottoman government had become a tax collection agency for European bankers. And here's the darkest part. Once you enter stage 5, there's no mathematical way out. You can't tax your way out. Provinces revolt. You can't cut spending. The military collapses. You can't inflate your way out. Your currency becomes worthless. You can't grow your way out. Growth requires investment, and all your money goes to interest. The Ottomans tried everything. None of it worked. By 1875, they declared bankruptcy. They literally told their creditors, "We can't pay." Now let me show you something that should terrify you. 2024. The United States paid $880 billion in interest on the national debt. Our total tax revenue? $4.9 trillion. That's 18% of all tax revenue going to interest. Just interest. Not paying down the debt, just the interest. Compare that to the Ottomans in 1768. They were at 70%. So America's not as bad, right? Wrong. Because here's what nobody's telling you about the interest payments. The Congressional Budget Office projects that by 2034, just 9 years from now, interest payments will consume $1.7 trillion per year. By that time, even if tax revenue grows, interest will consume 27% of all federal revenue. Let me put that in perspective. 2024 federal spending, Social Security, $1.5 trillion Medicare, $1.0 trillion. Defense, $877 billion. Interest on debt, $880 billion. By 2034, interest payments will exceed Social Security. Interest payments will exceed Medicare, plus defense combined. At that point, America faces the exact same choice the Ottomans faced in 1850. Option 1, default on the debt and destroy global trust. Option 2, cut Social Security and Medicare and face riots. Option 3, cut military and lose empire status. Option 4, hyperinflate and destroy the currency. There's no option 5, and it gets worse. Because the CBO projections assume interest rates stay low and there are no major crises. But what if interest rates go up? What if there's a recession and tax revenue drops? What if there's another pandemic, another war, another bailout? If interest rates hit 6%, and they've been higher in the past, interest payments would consume $2.4 trillion. That's nearly half of all tax revenue. That's Ottoman 1768 levels. People think it can't happen to America. We print our own currency, they say. Let me show you something. Countries that once had reserve currencies and still defaulted or collapsed. Spain in the 16th century had silver from the New World. France in the 18th century, largest European economy. Britain in the 20th century. Pound sterling was the reserve currency Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. Controlled global trade routes. Every single one thought they were too big to fail. Every single one thought their currency was special. Every single one entered the debt-death spiral. And every single one discovered the same truth. Math doesn't care about your empire. When debt service exceeds your ability to pay, you collapse. The only question is how. Ottomans entered stage 5 in 1768. Final collapse, 1922. That's 154 years later. America entered stage 5 in 2024. If history repeats at modern speed, we're looking at 2050 to 2070 for the final chapter. But stage 6 happens long before that. Stage 6, the fire sale, selling assets to pay debts, 1878. The Ottoman Empire just lost another war with Russia. The Berlin Congress forces them to give up Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, and more. But the territorial loss isn't the worst part. The worst part is what happens next. To pay war debts and keep the government running, the Ottomans start selling everything. Tobacco monopoly, sold to French bankers. Salt monopoly, sold to British investors. Railway rights, sold to German companies. Mining rights, sold to Belgian corporations. Port management, sold to Dutch merchants. They even sold the right to collect taxes in certain provinces. Think about that. The empire sold the right to collect its own taxes to foreign creditors. By 1900, foreign banks controlled 90% of Ottoman industry, the entire railway system, all major ports, and tax collection in 12 provinces. The Ottoman Empire still existed on maps, but economically, it was a colony owned by European banks. This is stage 6, the fire sale. When interest payments become unbearable, empires start liquidating assets. Not because they want to, because they have to. And here's the sinister part. The buyers know you're desperate, so they pay pennies on the dollar. Now let me show you what's already happening in America. As of 2024, foreign entities own 40 million acres of U.S. farmland, $7.6 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds, 15% of U.S. residential real estate in major cities, major stakes in U.S. ports, toll roads, and infrastructure. Top foreign owners of U.S. assets, China, 384,000 acres of farmland, plus stakes in food processing, tech, and entertainment. Saudi Arabia, major investments in U.S. tech. Real estate and defense contractors, UAE. Billions in U.S. infrastructure, ports, and logistics Canada, largest foreign landowner at 12.8 million acres. But it's not just land. Watch this. 2016, Chicago sold its parking meters to a foreign consortium for a 75-year lease 2018. Saudi Arabia, sovereign wealth fund invested $45 billion in U.S. infrastructure. 2021, toll roads in Texas. Indiana and Virginia, leased to foreign companies 2023. Water systems in Pennsylvania and Michigan sold to foreign operators. America is doing what the Ottomans did, selling long-term assets to pay short-term debts. But we're not desperate, people say. These are just investments. Really? When you sell farmland that feeds your population, when you sell ports that handle your military equipment, when you sell infrastructure that your economy depends on, you're not making investments. You're liquidating the empire. Here's how stage 6 works. Step 1, government needs money for debt payments. Step 2, CA raise taxes. That's political suicide. Step 3, KA cut spending. Entitlements are locked in step 4. Solution, sell assets to foreign buyers. Step 5, lose control of strategic resources. Step 6, economy weakens, need more money. Step 7, sell more assets. Step 8, repeat until nothing's left. The Congressional Budget Office has already identified potential assets for monetization: interstate highway system, leased to private operators, national parks, commercialization rights, frequency spectrum, sell to telecom postal service real estate, strategic petroleum reserve. They don't call it selling the empire. They call it public-private partnerships and asset monetization. When the Ottomans sold their tobacco monopoly, they called it modernization. When they sold railway rights, they called it foreign investment. When they sold tax collection rights, they called it efficient administration. The language was different. The result was the same. By 1914, there was technically still an Ottoman Empire. The Sultan still sat in his palace. The flag still flew. But the empire didn't control its own economy anymore. Every profitable industry, every strategic asset, every revenue stream was owned by someone else. They were sovereign in name only. America, in 2025, we control our own destiny for now. But every year we sell a little more, lease a little more, foreign ownership grows a little more. Stage 6 doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual fire sale that takes decades. The Ottomans were in Stage 6 from 1878 to 1914, 36 years of slowly losing control. America's fire sale started around 2008, after the financial crisis forced us to accept massive foreign investment. We're 17 years in. If history is a guide, we have maybe 15 to 20 years left before we hit the point of no return, before we become an empire in name only, before we reach Stage 7. Stage 7, terminal collapse. The empire ends, August 1914. The Ottoman Empire enters World War I on the side of Germany. It's a desperate gamble. Win, and maybe they can restore the empire. Lose, and November 1922. The Ottoman Empire officially ends. After 600 years, the Sultan is exiled. The palace is empty. The territories are divided among European powers. But here's what's important. The collapse didn't start in 1922. The empire was already functionally dead by 1900. No control over its economy, no control over its borders, no control over its provinces. Kept alive only because European powers couldn't agree on how to divide it. They called it the sick man of Europe for a reason. Stage 7 isn't when the empire officially ends. Stage 7 is when everyone finally admits it's over. The Ottoman Empire teaches us something crucial. Empires don't collapse in a day. They die slowly, stage by stage, year by year, and the people living through it? Most of them don't even notice. In 1920, there were still people in Istanbul who believed the empire would recover, who thought it was just a rough patch, who couldn't imagine a world without the Ottoman Empire. 2 years later, it was gone. So let's talk about where America is right now. Stage 1, currency supremacy, 1944 to 1971, complete. Stage 2, debt trap, 1980 to 2010. Complete Stage 3, currency debasement, 1971 to 2008. Complete Stage 4, regional rebellions, 2020 to present. Beginning Stage 5, debt death spiral, 2024 to present. We're here. Stage 6, the fire sale, 2008 to present. In progress, Stage 7, terminal collapse, not yet. We're in Stage 5 with elements of Stage 4 and Stage 6 happening simultaneously. The debt spiral is locked in. The math is clear. The fire sale has started. Foreign ownership is growing. Regional fractures are appearing. States are asserting independence. If America follows the Ottoman timeline at modern speed, Stage 5, debt spiral, 2024 to 2035. Stage 6, fire sale, 2008 to 2040. Stage 7, terminal collapse, 2040 to 2065. But that assumes a gradual decline. What if there's a catalyst, a major war, a currency crisis, a debt default, fast collapse scenario, 2030 to 2045. Slow collapse scenario, 2050 to 2070. Managed decline scenario, 2040 to 2080. The Ottoman Empire lasted 100 plus years after entering Stage 5 because no instant global communication, slower economic systems, no interconnected financial markets, geographic barriers protected them. America has none of those advantages. When our crisis comes, it will spread at digital speed. Markets will crash globally. Supply chains will freeze. The whole system is connected. The Ottoman collapse was regional. The American collapse will be global. I'm not saying America will cease to exist as a nation. Countries don't disappear, but empires do. The British Empire didn't end because Britain stopped existing. It ended because Britain couldn't afford to maintain global dominance anymore. In 1920, Britain controlled 25% of the world. By 1970, they controlled nothing but their island. The empire died. The country survived, but diminished, dependent, and broke. That's America's future if we stay on this path. Not extinction, just irrelevance. A former superpower that sold its assets, debased its currency, and collapsed under its own debt. So, what do you do with this information? First, understand this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is economic history. The pattern has repeated across every empire for 2,000 years. Rome, Byzantium, Spain, Ottomans, Britain, all of them followed the same 7 stages. None of them believed it would happen to them. If we're in stage 5, you have maybe 5 to 10 years before stage 6 accelerates. Here's what that means practically. Hard assets like real estate, gold, and commodities become more valuable than paper. Foreign currencies and international diversification matter. Skills become more valuable than credentials. Local networks become more important than national institutions. Self-sufficiency becomes essential. The Ottoman citizens who survived the collapse best were the ones who saw it coming, who didn't keep all their wealth in Ottoman currency, who had skills, land, and international connections. The ones who insisted the empire is eternal, they lost everything. America's decline isn't guaranteed. Empires can reform, but only if they acknowledge reality. And right now, we're still pretending everything is fine. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, we're rhyming with 1768 Istanbul. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe. Because this is what Backwallet does. We show you the patterns the powerful don't want you to see. The past is your profit. Don't waste it.